Well, hello again. Good day to you, and hopefully you had a wonderful holiday weekend. I guess if you're in America at least. Today's footage is from the middle of July, and we start out with working on connecting the yard hydrant for the pavilion slash entertaining area. Right now we have a sort of temporary water setup where we've got a couple IBC totes that we top off, and then a well pump and a 80-gallon pressure tank so that we have consistent pressure, and that's what feeds our camper at the moment. We use that to also feed our rabbitry when we need to do mist on hot days, and we use it to water our garden and to water the chicken coop when we need to. So I'm working on tying in the yard hydrant line. So I just connected the blue food grade hose that is a semi-useless hose to us because the when it was first purchased, it's supposed to be a heated hose, and we hooked it up and we plugged it in and we used it for about a week and realized that it was basically burning itself out, which is pretty crappy. I guess it was probably a little bit more than a week, but we bought it before we actually needed it, and so it was past the return period, so we couldn't return it, which is pretty lame. I mean, it works fine as a hose. I ended up just cutting the electric connectors off because they are pointless once it decided it didn't want to do anything. I think it had a short in the thermostat, because that was the little thermostat bulb was what actually blackened and started to smolder. So it's just a super thick, heavy-duty, regular old hose now. But it is, culinary water rated, which nowadays is kind of a big deal. You're not supposed to use garden hoses for drinking water, and since this will potentially be used for cleaning things when we're processing the animal carcasses, we wanted to make sure that it was culinary sufficient. So the black line is polyline that is used for the main water lines on to run water around properties, and so that's also culinary rated. So at the moment we're taking the hose setup and hooking a Y splitter up to the yard hydrant so that we can use it to provide water to the washer, and then we'll use the other side of the Y to connect to the garden area, or to the fire pit area, and there we have water. Yay! So this is kind of a big deal, because up until now, whenever we've had a fire pit, we've just filled up 3 blue water jugs, so we have 18 gallons of water ready to put the fire out whenever we need. But now, if for some reason we needed it, we technically have a consistent supply of 50 psi water that at any given time we have at least 200 gallons, and if everything is full and topped off, then we've got over 600 gallons, about 635 gallons plus however many gallons are actually in all of the water lines. And so there was the totes. This is the supply to the camper, and I'm adding a quick connect to it so that we can use it And that was it for the water line. It was actually surprisingly simple. I'm always a little hesitant about water because if you do it wrong, you find out that you cause lots and lots of damage. And it's really difficult to deal with, but we actually haven't had any problems with it. The only challenge that we have with it is that while the hydrant is properly buried, it's got a bucket with some gravel underneath. It's got a T-post next to it to help provide some stability for it. And then it actually runs underneath the spare room area and comes out into the ditch that's currently in this angle on the far side of the tractor. At the moment, the poly line, I coupled, I just ran it through the culvert that runs across the road or runs underneath the road, and then hooked that to the hose. When we get the water lines properly installed, there is actually a water line in that culvert there, or that goes deeper underneath the culvert. There's 2 water lines and 2 electrical PVC lines that were put in when I built that culvert so that we would have the ability to run electrical and water under there. And sadly, I guess not sadly, frustratingly, that was the end of the footage for the servicing of the tractor. For some reason the camera died, which is probably a good thing because there would have been an awful lot of cussing. There's a lot of things that Kubota designed well about their equipment. There's a lot of things that this particular Kubota, when things were final assembled at the dealership, and it's possible that there were 2 different dealers that it could have been that did that, so I can't say which one is which one did the shoddy work, but I've had so many stupid bolts and nuts and just things come loose and come off. And every time they claim that it's my fault because I didn't check them. The most current is that there's something squeaking in the rear axle, and I've had them out to look at it twice, and both times they claimed it was the lug nuts, that the tire is loose on the rim, that the rim is loose on the hub. And I was like, okay, so I bought an impact wrench, and we got the 14,000 foot-pound version, so it was as big of an impact wrench as I could find. And the last time, when I was working over at a friend's house to demolish some structures on their property for him, I ended up getting a flat tire on the front of the tractor, so I took that off, and I figured, since I've got the impact wrench there, I might as well just double check all the tires. So I used the backhoe and lifted the whole thing up off the ground, put the repaired tire on, and went around and tightened up every single one. And the squeaking is currently happening in the rear axle, and not one of the lugs on the rear, either side of the tire or of the tractor, none of the rear rims, none of the rear lugs moved at all. So they were already tight, and it's still squeaking, which leads me to just one of the many things that I'll never purchase from the Kubota dealer in Chehalis again, which is kind of sad for them because we have some plans for several different pieces of equipment in the not terribly distant future, but we'll see. Who knows what the future brings, and we'll see what brand we end up going with. But it is what it is. So what we're doing now is installing a French drain. We didn't get to really use this area at all last winter because once the rain started coming, there was just too much water flowing through this area, and it was just too swampy to walk through. So we know we need to control this, and I picked basically the lowest spot in this area, and I'm digging that down, and then we're going to use the laser level to create a ditch that runs all the way up through there. Excuse me. And then We're giving it a fairly steep pitch for water runoff. We're going with 1 inch of rise for every 3 feet. 3 to 4 feet is what we were shooting for. Um, that way, it'll hopefully keep water flowing out fairly quickly and well. Um, then we in today's footage, we only get as far as digging the trench and then getting starting to put the weeping sock in there. I actually ran 2 different sections of weeping tile or weeping sock, just because we had enough that we could, and I want to make sure that the water flow is sufficient, that it can allow that water to drain out, because on the other side of the shrubs behind the tractor is the driveway that goes up to the house site, and that has a ditch already connected to it. So if we can just get the water through the shrubs to that ditch, and I don't care if the water actually deposits and collects in the soil in this particular area, because there's a lot of shrubs here that actually want that water. There's a lot of dogwoods, snowberries, ash trees, and all of those love the water and are somewhat dependent on having a little bit higher water content than normal. Wow, that sunset's really changing the color in the video footage. Interesting. So Emily is walking along, and every time I move the tractor just a couple of feet, then she'll go by and test and tell me if I'm deep enough, and kind of lean the device to sort of get a feel for how much deeper I need to go. The receiver for the laser level. And then every time I move the tractor, she moves the receiver down 1 inch, which effectively means that wherever she ends up marking it, she's now marking 1 inch higher. And this actually worked out pretty well, because since we're taking a fair amount of dirt out of the ditch and piling it up off to the side there, we're adding the weeping tile, which takes up a fair amount of cubic feet worth of space, and then we created a gravel burrito with 2-inch drain rock. And all of that meant that I have more dirt to backfill than I actually took out, if that makes any sense. So I was able to use that to create a much more level area. And that worked definitely to our favor for getting that fire pit built. And all in all, it's a pretty straightforward process. I found a rock there. As always, got to save those rocks, because as you can see, there are not many. Most of that pile where I just added that rock to has come from a bunch of different places. That's all the rock that I've gathered for the fire pit. And then again, once we get to that point where it's close enough, and that's one of the advantages that we have with this, is that since I'm not looking for a specific depth and we're going steeper than we have to, if we're off a little bit, then it's not the end of the world. We can play with that a little. And then Charlie decided this was a good time to play, since Emily was just standing around as far as he's concerned. So this is Charlie, and granted that's on 10x, but it sometimes feels like that's about as fast as he runs in real life. When he gets hyper, he's all over the place. So there, while Emily was checking that grade, I was just kind of spreading things around to help get ready to smooth that. Then we're going to curve that a little bit so that it'll come over and then follow along the hog smoker. And we'll run that all the way up until I basically run the bucket into the wood pile. And I figured at that point we're a little bit higher than where the water has actually started to get muddy, because up there at that wood pile behind it, or in front of the tractor, it actually stayed pretty firm over there. So it's just this area, and you can kind of tell because there's actually this shrub on the left side of the screen is one of the dogwoods, and they grow in riparian areas. They like the water to be there. So the goal is to let things collect the water, but not so much that it becomes mucky. We put down some gravel around the fire pit and built out the fire pit with some decent sized rocks, and then we're going to we're going to bring in a bunch of compost, and we'll mix that with some topsoil and then spread that over all the grass. And this area will probably use some chemical treatment for weed control for the first year or two. I don't like using chemicals, but there is so much canary grass out here that we want to get a well-established grass bed for this area so that we don't have to worry about that canary grass growing back in. So we'll see. This will be one of the few areas that we actually intentionally keep mowed and manicured, because this will be, like I said, this will be our entertaining area. You can think of this essentially this is our backyard, although it's not really associated with the house in that manner. But it is all the functionality of a backyard is what we'll have here. And so, like I said, this is the weeping tile, and I've got two rolls of it. And one of the rolls was in two pieces, so went ahead and laid that down throughout this whole area. And then the next step is to backfill, so that'll be what the tomorrow footage is in the video. So thank you as always for watching. God bless you and yours, and stay safe out there.